Okay, so Sophie, we've been talking a little bit about like some of the significant changes that have been made to your eating and to like your exercise behavior over the last like year or two. So I'm wondering now if I could kind of ask some questions for us to get a sense on how that might have impacted your body weight, but also impacted like your medical, physical, and psychological health. Would that be okay?
Yeah, that sounds okay.
Yeah, so if we're starting with trying to understand the impact on your weight, we're going to go like way back and try and get a sense of what's kind of or was normal for you. So with mum and dad, I did see them briefly in the waiting room. Do you know if they've had any history of like dieting or weight loss at all?
Well, mum and dad do kind of do some yo-yo dieting over the years, and mum has had weight loss surgery recently.
Yeah. So mum's current weight is below what's kind of normal for her.
Yeah, she used to be quite overweight. Same with dad.
Okay, so yeah, we would kind of say that they're like a higher weight or above average weight.
Oh.
They're higher weight than kind of maybe other parents or other people their age.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, yeah. And then what about your older brother? Would we say his weight sort of normally sits around average, above average, or below average?
Probably above average as well, yeah.
Okay, all right. And then if we're thinking for you in your early years, so if you can kind of think back to primary school,
Okay.
and it's just a bit of a guess, you don't need you to be perfect about it.
Yeah.
If you can remember in primary school compared to like the other kids in your class,
Yeah.
maybe if we start with your height, were you sort of similar height, above average or below average?
I was always like one of the tallest kids in my class, so I'd
Yeah.
probably above average.
Yeah. And then what about if we're thinking sort of weight and shape? Did you feel like you were similar to your peers, below average or above average for weight and shape?
Probably above average. I felt like the chubby kid most of the time.
Okay, and that kind of fits with what you've told me about sort of like your family history and kind of what we would expect you to be genetically predisposed to. So mum, before she had weight loss surgery, kind of naturally sat in a body size that we would say was above average. So does dad, so does your brother. So it kind of makes sense that like in primary school that your height was a bit taller and your weight was a bit heavier.
Yeah, that makes sense when you put it like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if we think about when you first got your period, do you remember what age you were when that happened?
I think it was quite early. I think I was around 11. Yeah.
Okay. So you remember feeling like you got it a bit sooner than some of your other peers?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you happen to know how old mum was when she got hers?
Oh, I'm not too sure. It was probably around the same time.
Yeah. Okay. So it kind of felt early compared to your peers, but it was kind of within the normal range, and it kind of tells us that your weight and shape and growth was kind of tracking along normally.
Okay. Yeah.
So now if we think about sort of in high school, kind of again compared to the kids in your class, again starting with height, how do you feel like you kind of stacked up against the others in your class?
I wasn't like as differently tall, but I was.
They all caught up?
Yeah, I was still quite a tall kid in high school, yeah.
Yeah, so still maybe slightly taller than average?
Yeah, probably, yeah.
Yeah, and then if we think about your weight and shape compared to your peers, above average, below average, or average?
Still above average. It was, I think, grade 7, I was like 48 kilograms.
Okay, yeah, what makes that weight kind of stand out for you?
I guess that's kind of just, I think it was in a PE class or something. We took weights and heights, and I just remember that was what mine was.
Okay, so that was grade 7, which would have made you about 11, 12?
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember any other weights like through high school?
I remember I was around 63 in the start of grade 12.
Yeah.
And then
so about like 17.
17,
yeah.
But then like formal and things, I wanted to look good in my dress, so I tried to lose some weight, and I think I eventually got down to like 55 kilograms.
Yeah, and that's when you sort of said those changes to eating definitely kind of started to like kick off in around grade 12.
Yeah.
Okay, so it sounds like up until then, your height and weight had always kind of tracked within the above average ranges.
Yeah.
your weight in grade 12 was about 63 kilos and it dropped down to 55 kilos.
Yeah.
Do you know what's the highest weight that you've ever been in your life so far?
Probably 63. Yeah.
Yeah. And then do you know what the lowest is that your weight has been since that time onwards?
55.
55.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's have a look at what the number on the scale is today.
Yeah.
I'll just get you to kick off your shoes
Yeah.
for me. And I can see you've got something coming to your jumper. I'll just get you to kick off your jumper.
That sounds good.
Awesome. Nothing in pockets. Got no pockets.
No pockets.
All right. We might just grab your height first. So I'll get you just to stand up against here. 165. Does that sound out right?
Yep.
Great. And now the scales. So I'll just turn them on. I'll just wait for them to go to 0. Great. And I'll just get you to stand on. And what's it say there? 58. Great. Okay, you can just take another seat. Thank you for that. You can pop your things back on when you're ready. I'm just going to plot a couple of those points that you've told me. Now, I know this isn't like a perfect science. We're just trying to get a little bit of a sense. And what I'll do is try and cross-check some of this with mum and dad. I know that you've said that you've seen the same GP for quite a long period of time. But you've given me a couple of data points that might be really helpful for us just to plot on this graph.
Okay.
So we've set it about 12, you're about 48 kilos, and then the next weight we had was 63 at about 17. Did I get that right?
Yes. Yep.
And then today at about 19, be closer to 19 than 19 and a half. 50. I might just show you this if that's okay. So this is a growth weight chart for girls aged 0 to 20.
Mm-hmm.
So what we have along the bottom is ages, 0 through to 20.
Mm-hmm.
Then we've got weight in the first graph and height in the second one. So I guess if we think about height, as you've kind of described, we know that there's a range.
Mm-hmm.
So this dark middle line is what we call 50th percentile, which is average. But obviously for us to have average, we have to have above average and below average. So we've got here the 97th percentile, meaning the kid who was the same height or taller than 97% of people.
Oh, yep.
And then the shortest kid, so the one that was taller than or as tall as 3%. So we know that there's a range, and that's really normal.
Right.
And what we can also see is no matter whether you're the tallest kid or the shortest kid or someone in between, you kind of all grew at the same rate. And everyone's growing in terms of height has just about stopped at about, what do you reckon, 16. It's starting to like peter out.
Yeah, right.
So now if we look at weight, it's interesting, like in primary school, or kind of prior to starting primary school, in those first 6-7 years, there's such a tiny difference between the biggest kid and the smallest kid. And that's generally what we see in like preschool and kindy. Most kids look about the same weight and shape, but as we enter into primary school, that difference becomes more apparent. And just like our height, there's a range. So we have average, but then we have those people who are above average and those people that are below average.
Yeah.
And again, no matter whether you were someone who was a heavier weight, a lower weight, or in between, everyone's weight really kicked off quite rapidly at like 11, 12. And this is when you said you started getting your period.
Yeah.
So this is when we start to like gain a lot of weight to go through puberty.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And you can see everybody gained weight quite rapidly at this stage.
Yeah.
The other thing that's really interesting is that like this only goes until 20, but we can see that even if we're looking up at 19 or 20, these lines haven't petered out yet. So whether you were the smallest kid, the biggest kid, or someone in between, everybody's weight kept tracking up and up and up and up and up until this graph finished, which is at 20. And unfortunately I don't have a graph to kind of show you what it looks like after that. Yeah. Something else that we know is, some people kind of do grow at different rates, but particularly around weight, we can see most people kind of generally grow their weight at the same rates. And what we know is that if someone keeps tracking along the same growth chart for them, that's perfectly normal. They're continuing along at what was normal for them, and they'll generally continue to be pretty healthy and happy. So I'm struggling with this pen.
That's okay.
So let's say if we're looking at the kid who's in the 90th percentile, like as long as his weight or her weight keeps going at the 90th percentile, that person's going to be perfectly normal and happy. Okay. If that person drops off that growth chart, we normally start to see some like really big significant deterioration in their physical health and their mental health.
Oh, okay.
Because up until the age of 20, I mean, weight loss generally is nowhere near as normal as we've kind of been led to believe, but particularly in young people up to 2021, weight loss is actually really like risky and it's a red flag.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so up until we're 20, we're still laying down like bone mineral density, and what we've got at 20 is what we're kind of stuck with. It just deteriorates from there. We're still laying down fat stores so that we can like go through puberty, develop reproductive function, and parts of our brain, like our prefrontal cortex, are still developing at around the age of 20. So if we lose weight in that stage, it delays the like development of all of those things and puts someone at risk of things like osteoporosis and bone fractures, infertility, and lots of sort of things, because the body hasn't been able to move through its growth trajectory as it should have.
Oh, that sounds pretty serious.
Yeah, and if we kind of look at what's normal here, we can see that no matter if you are in the 97th percentile, the 3rd percentile, or anywhere in between, no one's lost weight. Like they've kept tracking.
Yep.
Is this making sense so far?
Yeah, it makes sense, yeah.
So if we look at what's happening for you, and I know we've only got a few little data points, so we have that you at age 12, you're sitting about the 75th percentile, which kind of fits with what you were telling me. Like you were saying that you felt like you were a bit chubbier or a bit bigger than the rest of the kids. And you stayed at that data point at the age of 17. So you were still kind of sitting at around the 75th percentile. What we can see though then is today your weight has dropped right down to the 50th percentile, where it should have kept tracking up. And if your growth hadn't been disrupted by this eating disorder, we would expect today that your weight would be at least about 65 kilos. So it's sitting quite a lot below where it would have ended up if this eating disorder hadn't come along. What are your thoughts around that? What is it like to kind of see that?
Well, I wasn't that worried about it before because I thought it was a good thing.
Yeah.
But like you were saying, that if you drop off your growth line, you get all these bad physical things happen, makes me a bit worried.
Yeah, we'll have a bit of a talk about that in a moment. We'll do a bit of an assessment to see like what some of the impact of this has been for you.
Yeah.
Are there any other kind of questions about that or anything else that kind of stands out that you wanted to talk about?
Not really, I don't think so.
Yeah, okay. So maybe if we do have a little bit of a think about how you dropping off your growth chart and being quite underweight in compared to what's normal for you, how that's affected you.
Okay.
So I hope it's okay with you, but my memory works well if I kind of scan you.
Okay.
So if I go through and ask some questions kind of from your head through to your toe, and then once I've gathered all of that information, I'll kind of feed some of it back to you with some information. Does that sound okay?
Yeah.
Before I start, I have a bit of a corny question. If I had a remote control for your life and we could rewind back in time to a point where food and eating was like relaxed for you, so you just ate what you wanted when you wanted, you didn't have like the guilt and distress and the indecision that you're having around meals at the moment. So if I could rewind back to when that was the case for you, how far back do you reckon we would need to rewind?
I think back to probably grade 11 when I was 16.
Okay.
I think up until then, yeah, any time before kind of grade 12, I think.
Yeah.
Food was just, it wasn't as big a deal as it is now.
Yeah, so if we were to like hang out for the day, you'd be able to kind of go along to the cafes and restaurants I was going to and kind of order easily off menus and not think too much about what you were eating.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. My corny question again.
Yeah.
If we were going to rewind back to when your mental health was at its best, and I remember you told me before that you were a little bit of an anxious kid, but that you were a little bit of a worrier, but you were okay. You were pretty high functioning and well adjusted. You didn't ever go to a psychologist or a counselor or have medication.
Yeah.
But I do know that you mentioned as well that your anxiety has been pretty debilitating kind of recently. So if we were to rewind back to when your mental health was at its best, kind of relative to you, how far back would we be rewinding?
I reckon when I was 15, I was really like going well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And when did it really start to change, do you think?
Probably like when I, like 2 months into grade 12, I was getting really stressed and yeah.
Okay. So after some of the changes to your food and eating had happened, so you were kind of relaxed around eating up until 16, which is grade 11.
Yeah. And
then kind of 2 months into grade 12, you really started to notice that your anxiety kicked off.
Yeah.
Okay. That's really helpful. Okay, back to my scanning.
Yeah.
So thinking about like your hair, do you notice any sort of hair loss or thinning or more sort of hair in the brush or the shower when you're doing your hair?
I haven't really thought about it, but now that I think about it, I think a little bit more is coming out in the shower.
Okay, yeah, all right. And then thinking about our brain, so your memory, attention, and concentration, would you say that that's kind of better, worse, or the same as it has been in the past?
Yeah, I'm having a little bit of trouble concentrating at the moment, so probably worse than before.
Yeah, okay. And we talked a little bit about your anxiety, so feeling sort of more anxious, preoccupied, and a bit more obsessive than usual. What about your mood? So I guess how sort of sad or teary or depressed you feel. Have you noticed that to have changed at all?
Yeah, I think that's definitely, I've been feeling more sad recently, and like I'd get to a point where I need to cry more often than I usually would.
Yeah, I'm really sorry to hear that. I'm glad that you're here, and we can come up with a plan to start to turn some of that around for you.
Okay. Yeah.
While you're feeling so bad, have you ever found yourself feeling like you don't want to live anymore?
No, it hasn't got to that point yet. I haven't thought about that.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, unfortunately, sometimes when people are feeling sort of as sad and flat as you're explaining, that's something that can kind of happen for them. I'm glad it's not the case for you yet, and I hope that it doesn't become the case for you. But I'm wondering, could I check in around that with you every now and again, just to make sure that things kind of haven't gotten any worse, just so we can make sure that we keep you safe and well until we kind of get you back feeling like yourself again?
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all good.
Okay, great. That's mood. What about your energy levels? Have they noticed any difference?
Yeah, they're definitely lower than they were.
Yeah.
I've been feeling quite tired, like even just on waking.
Yeah.
I'm feeling quite tired.
Yeah. And you were sort of saying at the beginning that you're getting frustrated with like some of your runs and your run times, like feeling like you didn't have the energy to complete them or complete them as quickly.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
It's so annoying.
Yeah. And what about your sleep? Do you notice yourself sleeping any longer than usual or finding it difficult to get to sleep?
I feel like it's harder to get to sleep because I feel quite anxious before going to bed.
Yeah.
But I do end up sleeping quite a lot longer than I usually would.
And
then it's harder to wake up. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're really in a bit of a bad patch at the moment, aren't you? Everything's really out of whack.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Now we did talk at the beginning about the fact that you kind of made yourself sick sometimes after eating because you feel really distressed, and it's in your effort to try and make yourself feel better. Can I ask a few more questions around that? Yeah. When you're throwing up or when you've thrown up in the past, have you ever noticed blood in the toilet?
No.
Okay. Can I tell you just a little bit of information about that? Yeah, so what we know is like throwing up in, I guess, on purpose, puts us at a higher risk of esophageal tears and developing kind of like throat cancer. Now, I'm telling you this not to try and tell you off or lecture you. I mean, if it was easy as not doing it, you obviously would have done that already. And I hope that with us working together, we'll be able to turn this around and, it won't be something that you continue doing. But in the meantime, when you're throwing up, if you do notice any blood in the toilet, it's probably a really good idea, or it would be a very good idea, just to flag that with the GP when you see her next, just so that we can get everything checked out and kind of monitor any risks that might be going on for you.
Okay, yeah.
Is that
I
okay?
can do that, yeah.
Do you feel comfortable flagging that with your GP?
Yeah, I could probably do that.
Yeah. Okay. Could I talk to you a little bit more about vomiting and how we can just help manage and minimize some of the risks to your teeth in the meantime?
Yeah. Okay.
Has anyone kind of shared any information with you about that?
No. I didn't realise that was something to be aware of, yeah.
Yeah, I'm really glad that we're having this conversation. Thank you for being so open and honest with me. Yeah, so obviously when we vomit, it generally tastes pretty awful. And so I guess it's kind of natural instinct to then want to go and brush our teeth or use some mouthwash to try and get rid of the taste and the smell. As much as that makes total sense, it's kind of the worst thing that we can do.
Okay.
Yeah, so I guess if we kind of think about it, we've got like acids in our stomach that are there to like break down food. And so obviously when we throw up, they end up in our mouth, which kind of makes our teeth a bit more porous and sensitive. And then if we're using something abrasive like a toothbrush or any dental products that have like chemicals or anything in them, it's putting our teeth at a really high risk of like cavity and decay.
Right.
So have you had any teeth sensitivity at all?
Just a little bit, yeah.
Okay, and that's been just since these changes have started?
Yeah.
Okay. It might be a good idea just to go along to your dentist and just get them to check it out. You can let them know that you're in treatment for an eating disorder and that we've suggested that you go along and just get your teeth checked because they might be able to help do something about preventing that damage getting any worse.
Okay.
The other thing that you can do though is not use any sort of dental products for at least like an hour after throwing up. And just rinse your mouth out with water. And some people use some bicarb soda. I'll give you a bit of a handout that just neutralizes some of the acid in your mouth.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that would be helpful, the handout.
Yeah. How's it feel for you to kind of hear that information?
It's kind of confronting. Like, it was kind of, I didn't realize those things were kind of happening, but I guess it's helpful to know that there's things you can do.
Yeah, and like I absolutely have every hope that we're going to turn things around. This will be a thing for the past, but it'd be unrealistic for us to expect that those behaviours are going to stop straight away.
Yeah.
So hopefully you've got some strategies to try and reduce some of the harm in the meantime.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah.
Okay. Can I go back to kind of scanning you? Yeah, you're doing a really good job with all of my questions. So I guess if we're thinking, kind of talked about your throat, so kind of your heart, do you notice yourself getting dizzy or lightheaded?
Yeah, sometimes.
Okay. Is that usual for you or is that a change?
That's a change, yeah.
Okay.
It doesn't happen that often, but I have noticed maybe once a week or something, like when I get up from sitting, I feel a little bit dizzy, off balance.
Have you fainted at all?
No.
Okay. Can I share some more information?
Yeah.
Okay. So with eating disorders that are as serious as yours, what we know is that without treatment, unfortunately, 20% of people actually die. That rate of death reduces significantly with treatment and recovery, but it's a really, really risky illness, and the main causes of death are like a cardiac event. So I guess that's why I'm feeling a little bit alarmed about you being like dizzy and lightheaded. And you might have realised or noticed at the GP before you came in, the assessment that she did, she got you to kind of lay down and do like your heart rate and blood pressure, and then she got you to do it again when you were standing up. So that's her also keeping her eye on your heart rate and blood pressure, and any significant changes in that, as well as I guess you feeling like dizzy and lightheaded or fainting, are really big red flags that your heart's not coping anymore.
Oh, okay.
So some of the things that compromise the heart in someone with an eating disorder is one, just like lack of fuel or nutrition. So if we kind of think about these all being little machines or systems, like our brain, our heart, our digestion, they all need like fuel to operate. And so if your heart isn't getting in as much energy as it's used to, and that was really quite apparent at the beginning of the assessment, that sometimes you barely eat at all during the day, then your heart doesn't have any energy to work. The other thing that really affects our heart, two things actually, is our heart uses like electrolytes to like beat, and when we throw up, I guess like it disrupts all the electrolytes in our body. And then the third one, I suppose, is kind of putting it under intentional strain, like through exercise. You kind of are a triple whammy. So we've got like weight loss and insufficient intake for your heart to keep working. We've got vomiting, and we've got exercise. And then we've also got some signs and symptoms that your heart's not coping, like you feeling dizzy and lightheaded. So I guess what you can do about this in the meantime is if you faint, that's not something to muck around with. I'd just be going straight to the emergency department and just asking them to check you out. If they need to call me or the GP, they can organise to do that. But yeah, you just need to really get to the emergency department straight away.
Okay.
The other thing would be just with kind of what you've told me, is just trying to think about whether you can reduce some of the intensity of your exercise. So anything that's getting your heart rate up is also putting your heart at risk.
Okay.
So if you can think about, I guess, maybe swapping your runs for some long walks or some yoga or some stretching, just because we want to really try and protect your heart until we get you back to a place of health.
Okay, yeah. Well, I guess that's something I will consider doing, seeing how serious it sounds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really great to hear that, you're in a really awful spot. I'm glad that you're here getting some help, you're being so brave and taking those first few steps. But I feel really hopeful as well, knowing that you're able to make some little changes based off today just to keep yourself safe before we start treatment.
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess moving down from heart, we're thinking about like your periods. You first got them at like 11, 12. You're now 19. Yeah. Have you ever gone on any sort of contraceptive pill or the bar in your arm?
No, I haven't had anything like that.
Okay. And when you first started getting your periods, what were they like?
They were quite like, once I had them regularly, they were like 5 days a week.
So pretty regular.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay. And at the moment, what are your periods like?
Oh, I don't have it at the moment.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. When did you last have a period?
Probably about a year ago.
Okay. Right, there's a lot of signs and symptoms here, isn't there, that you kind of falling off that growth chart, your weight being really below what's normal for you, and your eating disorders, it really is like affecting your mental health. Like you're a lot more anxious than usual, you're feeling more sad than usual. It's really affecting your physical health as well. I think I mentioned a little bit already that that one of the risks of an eating disorder and weight loss, particularly in younger years, can be osteoporosis and infertility. So what we know is someone who's had 3 missed periods consecutively, so it's well and truly you, that they're generally already in a stage of what the doctors call, I think off the top of my head, osteopenia. So it means that you are at really high risk already of osteoporosis. So I guess what I would like to do is, one, I'll ask the doctor to consider getting you a bone mineral density scan so we can just see what's happening with your bones. But also going back to running, if we're thinking about your bones being a bit more vulnerable and a bit more brittle and prone to fractures, we really don't want you kind of like thumping on a pavement. So really wanting to like reduce any sort of impact to kind of protect your bones between now and getting yourself well.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, so we really would be encouraging, I know it's a big ask, and we've only known each other for a short period of time, but really, really encouraging you to dial back that running, if not stop, and choose something that's lower impact and less likely to harm your heart and your bones.
Yeah, okay. I think, seeing it's my bones as well now, I could probably try and reduce the running.
Yeah, okay. And then do you want to, like, is children something that you kind of wanted to have at some stage?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So we really need to get your weight back up to a place where you would start to be able to have a regular menstrual cycle, so that we know that you're in a place to be fertile and to have children one day.
Okay. Yeah, alright.
Yeah.
That's a good motivator, I guess.
Yeah. Are there any other things about your own physical health that you've noticed that you have questions about or you want to raise?
I think we pretty much covered all of them. I don't know, I didn't really even think about any of those things because I was just thinking about, the weight and how happy I was about it coming off. So
That's totally normal. It's the hardest thing about kind of being in the situation that you're in is that it feels often good, and people might even be telling you that you're healthier, which is a whole other story for a whole other day. But what we're finding is that you're actually not healthier.
Yeah, this kind of finding this out kind of makes me reconsider some of my things that I've been doing.
Yeah. Okay. Well, like I said, I'm really glad that you're here, and once I finish our assessment, I'll tell you a little bit about what treatment options we have for you, and I'd really love to see you getting started with treatment so we can help you in turning this around.
Yeah, that would be good. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Did you have any other questions for me about your physical or mental health before we kind of move on?
No, I don't think so.
No. Okay. I might just end it there.
Yeah, cool.
I was so much more nervous with you.
Oh no, you did so well.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you have any feedback for me? I feel like I blundered over a few things.